everybody. It's Marion.
I'm Dr. Geyer.
And it is time for the workshop. We've been talking about this for weeks. I, for one, am very excited. This is so different from normal immune system stuff because we're going further than just sunshine, water, and vitamin D, basically. So let's dive in. If you are here and you're watching, give us a shout out. You get points for it for the raffle. We have some fun prizes. Mm-hmm. So, and if you didn't RSVP and you're here, welcome. We're very excited. All right. So, first up,
that's me over there. I'm Dr. Geyer. I'm an integrated physician. I see families. I see a little bit of everything, and I'm a mom of 5.
And I am Marion. I am a holistic health coach, and I primarily focus on effortless therapeutic diets. So if you are dealing with some stuff and you need some guidance on food, I'm the go-to girl, and I am a mom of 4. So first up, we got to talk about the immune system and what you really need to know about it.
The immune system is really complicated. And so I want to go in a little bit. I want to start talking about things that we don't necessarily think about. And I want to address the things that patients bring to me all the time that they have had misinformation, they're misguided, they don't necessarily know. And that's what a lot of these things are focused on in some of the slides. But before we do that,
let's talk about how we accidentally limit our immune system. And I love that she uses the word limit because I don't hear that very often, but that's exactly what it does because it doesn't stop working. We don't suppress it. We limit its ability to do its job. So number 1, and this is so big this time of year because it's in everything, but we overload on grains and sugar and alcohol. And it's just easy to do. Holiday parties and all the yummy food, it's all there. And then next up is less sleep and poor quality of sleep, which is kind of weird because it's dark so much, but there's so much to fit in that we're sleeping less. And then if we're not adequately, if we're keeping our house too hot or too cold, or we don't have good blankets, then we're also inhibiting our ability to get quality sleep. We're outside much less. We have some people walking in. Hi, come on in. Welcome.
We're live.
Yeah.
I figured.
Yeah. So we're just talking about how we accidentally limit our immune system, and we're talking about how this time of year we overload on grains and sugar and alcohol. We're getting less sleep because we're trying to fit everything in, and maybe it's hot or cold. I know the heater wakes me up at like 3 in the morning. We're outside a lot less, and if we are, we're covered up, so we're not getting vitamin D. And then because we're not hot and sweating, we're not drinking nearly enough water. And then we're stressed, and there's a lot of anger that goes on. We got snowbirds, and I'm like, oh my God, please use your blinker. So all of these things combined limit our immune system.
Most people know all of these things, but I want to go into a little bit of specifics about sugar because this is when we give ourselves, I tend to give myself a little bit more leeway to have more sugar as the goodies come in, and patients love to bring me things, and I love that they bring me things. It's fantastic, and I bring them home and I share them with my families, and lots and lots of sugar. But a key piece about sugar is that sugar can hit us within 30 minutes. It can actually depress our immune system within 30 minutes of ingesting it, and that can last for up to several hours. So we're talking about 5 hours that it's decreased our immune system for. And if we have enough of it, let's say a couple of sodas or more, then we can actually decrease it by up to 40%. So you're at a party, you're around lots of germs, you're wherever, and you just decrease your immune system by 40%. And that's only the sugar. That's not talking about, let's say you have an alcoholic drink, you had less sleep the night before. One of the top vitamin deficiencies is vitamin D. It's lower in the winter because we're inside more, we're not exposed to the sun. And then we tend to drink less water, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a compound effect here. So I really wanted to highlight sugar because we all love sugar, but we often don't realize the impact it has on our immune system.
Yep.
All right, let's talk first line of defense. This is one of my favorites to talk to patients about because honestly, they don't really know. They don't necessarily know that we cry as a defense mechanism. that our skin is our primary defense, that bacteria are going to go in and viruses are going to go into our mouth. And so that mucous membrane from our nose, our mouth, all the way down is part of our immune system and our defense system. Key pieces is we have these little cilia in our throat, and so we'll make mucus. We have these goblet cells, which are appropriately named, that make mucus, and that will make more and more mucus when it detects any foreign intruder. And so that'll create lots of mucus. Then our cilia is what's giving us that tickle, and we're getting it, clearing our throats. And so that's a key piece, is the immune system is doing what it's supposed to. And we tend to say, oh, I need to take this mucolytic, or I need to do this. Yes, we need to get it out, but we don't need to cripple the immune system, or it gets worse. All right, this is another one of my favorites. I get this all the time. Does cold weather make you sick? Well, yes and no. That's the reality of it. Cold weather is not making you sick. But we have to talk about the infections, where they're talking about viruses or bacteria. And we have to talk about the host, which is you. It's whoever that intruder is trying to get into. Key pieces, research has shown that viruses survive, replicate, and actually spread more readily in cold temps and decreased humidity. So this was just in the news. A lot of people are getting their humidifiers, right? But what you don't realize is that bacteria are opposite. So bacterial infections tend to come up in the summer. Viral infections come up in the winter. They're opportunistic, right? So think about this. What temperature are you normally?
98.
Okay.
I'm usually a little less than that. But.
Yeah, I'm like 97.2.
All right,
I'm 98, I'm sick.
We'll say the average person is 98.6. In your nasal passages, you're actually about 91, 92, which already makes it more of a beautiful environment for a virus to take up residence and replicate. Now, viruses, specifically the flu virus, they found loves to replicate at 41 degrees or less, which means places that have cold temperatures, viruses are just having a party. So that's kind of a key piece. And then the decreased humidity, and of course in Arizona, it's super dry in the winter. It's hard to combat that. Then we talk about the host. Most people know vitamin D. It was the sexy nutrient, before most other nutrients became sexy. People were talking about it. Stress, fluctuation in emotions. I'm going to talk about this later because it's really cool when we get into those little nitty-gritty tidbits. More time indoors. So this is, people think more time indoors, less vitamin D, right? Rather than more time indoors, more people putting bugs
Recirculating
everywhere, recirculating
Sure,
the air,
yeah.
breathing in, breathing in, and breathing in. So we're compounding the exposure. It's all in one place. Blood vessels constricting. So when you're cold, your hands get cold, your feet get cold. Think, they go maybe pale, maybe they go even blue for some people that have, blood issues with their blood vessels. But that happens in your nasal passages and in your respiratory passages, right? This is why asthmatics have such a hard time in the cold. Now, your blood needs to pump for immune cells to reach areas. So if your blood vessels are constricted in your nose, then your immune cells are not reaching it as effectively. Just an interesting piece.
Wow.
Hand washing, hot showers, and baths. So I am so cold. I love a hot shower. I love my long hot showers. I know. I am conserving water. I promise. But I love my hot showers. And so a couple of key pieces about this. One, your skin is going to lose its integrity a little bit. So it's not going to work as well as a shield. Two, you actually have immune cells in your skin that most people don't know about. And so you're washing those off. You're getting rid of your own innate immune system there. And then you might get cuts and cracks and,
Yeah, I know a lot of
dryness.
people that get cracked hands all winter long.
Yeah.
When my son was born, this is when I started getting kind of a little more holistic. And I was working with deaf-blind individuals, so their hands were on my hands all the time. And I didn't want to depend on antibacterial hand soap because I was like, oh, there's, antibiotic resistance and all this stuff, and I don't want to pass it on to my kid. What do I do? And my family doctor was like, 2 minutes underwater does just as good of a job as soap, if not better, but you don't have to worry about that. So it's like I always avoid the soap because I know they put antibacterial stuff, and I just 2 minutes underwater. And it's like you don't have to waste money on soap when you can just use water. It doesn't even have to be hot.
Yeah.
So you can just cold water 2 minutes, just pretend like you're using soap, and then your hands are clean. and you're
For the people
protecting.
that are watching, you're just like,
Yeah. I'm an interpreter, so I'm very, I
love
act things out all the time, and my eyebrows go crazy, so.
I am not telling people not to wash their hands, though. I just want to make that disclaimer, like, wash your hands.
Oh, please.
Please wash your hands. And just be cognizant of when you're washing your hands and do it with intention in like the right timing. So I am a neurotic hand washer. It's a really good thing for me because I'm around people all day long. I'm around sick people. I have 5 kids. I have a family of 8 at home. And so the exposures are constant, and I'm not going to spread that. However, some people just do it because it's a habit or because it becomes almost an obsessive thing where they're like, oh my goodness, I'm protecting myself this way. I'm protecting myself this way. If you haven't touched anything, you don't need to worry about it. I mean, worry more about, your respiratory passages, how's your immune system, and those are details that we're gonna talk about. But don't stop washing your hands. That's all I can hear later. Somebody's gonna be like,
exactly.
yeah, wash
All
my
right, so we're going to be talking about the immune system all throughout, but the point is not to get an anatomy lesson. The point is to learn how we can protect ourselves, and we're going to address it mind, body, soul, because as we know, our mind affects our body and vice versa. So we got to make sure we address all of it.
Mm-hmm.
So
One thing I love to throw this in every single time we present and talk is that 10% of our cognitive function is conscious. 90% of it is subconscious. And so we can't go back to this enough in my mind. Like my brain constantly goes to the logical, scientific, what I understand, analytic, because that's my natural place. But I'm constantly reminding patients, I'm constantly, with them. And it's very, very important to talk about health through the holidays and talk about the fact that 90% of what's happening in your body, you have no idea. So all that mind, gibberish that you're going through, that's 10%. And we're going to talk about how cool things that, we don't necessarily think about that are influencing our immune system later.
So I love this with all of my being. Everybody's getting sick, and I'm all like, y'all need some fruits and vegetables. It's true. Don't skimp on them this time of year because you need them.
Mm-hmm.
So I love talking about food. I love eating food. I love eating the food that loves me back. But I always get so blown away when people are like, oh, I don't eat fruits and vegetables. And I'm like, well, what do you eat?
what
Like
do they eat?
rice and chicken,
Meat.
eggs,
Soy.
lots of soy.
Lots of processed
Yeah, lots
soy.
of boxed foods, granola bars,
Yeah.
mac and cheese. I think. I don't know. That's what my boyfriend ate when I met him, and he doesn't eat fruits and vegetables. He does eat apples now, so I'm
That's
pretty
what I do.
excited about that. I always go back to that,
market.
and he does not mind that I tell the world about it because he's like, he owns it. He's almost proud of it, and I'm like, I don't know if that's something to be proud of, honey, but immune boosting foods. So yes, fruits and vegetables, but what are some things that are extra powerful? And one of them is raw apple cider vinegar, not the clear stuff from the grocery store, but you want it to be cloudy and dark. It's so good, and I just went blank on all the benefits of it. It smells really bad. But I mean, it gives you, so it has probiotics in it. It's antimicrobial. And it just
It's
kind
pretty
of,
good mucolytic if you've ever taken a good swig
Oh,
of
yeah.
apple cider vinegar. It's like, oh.
yeah, it gets
Oh,
things
it's all
moving. It gets your
loosened up.
digestive juices moving. So again, things are coming in. We got to make sure our stomach's acidic so that it kills it before it reaches our intestines. So it just kind of helps the gallbladder empty. It's really, really good stuff. I have a recipe for a tonic that will not burn your nose and does not burn your esophagus. And so it's in the handouts. So if you are attending here, they're here. And then if you RSVP'd, you'll be getting them emailed to you after tonight or after the workshop. Next up is bone broth. Just because of how it protects the intestines and how good it is for us. They say it's medicinal. Why?
I have to kind of get in
Yeah.
here. one key piece, a lot of my patients are vegans, and so they don't
yeah.
do a bone broth, which is totally fine. There are so many amazing broths out there. Key piece is that we know that intermittent fasting increases our immune system, and we also know that when we're getting sick or when we're already sick, that it takes a ton of energy for our immune system to concentrate. And so for us to eat things, it's very heavy. We take a lot of energy to digest. And it's super important to keep it light. So on that aspect, we know fasting, intermittent fasting, and keeping it light, super helpful for the immune system. We also know that anything that's very simple to break down, any broth that's highly nutritive, whether or not it be a bone broth or whether or not it be a vegan or a veggie type broth, all fantastic. So I always like to throw that in there so that people know that broths are just so good for your immune system as long as they're not a really junky, high sodium.
Yeah, you want to be making it yourself if you can. So they're light, and then bone broth specifically helps protect the intestinal lining and the integrity of it. And then we have raw honey, and specifically Manuka honey. And then fermented foods, again, we want to get the probiotics in there just to help protect us, and we have to replace them every single day. So now is a really good time to be enjoying them. And then, of course, omega-3 fatty acids, which come from wild-caught fish, pasture-raised meat, and dark leafy greens. It's not just animal sources. So we just want to make sure about that. And so these are the foods that you really want to make sure you're keeping on hand. I have like bone broth in my freezer for when I do start feeling under the weather, because broth is a fasting food. It's not necessarily starving yourself, but it also helps keep you full while you're letting your digestive system rest and your immune system can pull away and focus on other things.
I always get a lot of questions about flax oil. I'm not the biggest fan of flax oil for omegas. I'd rather an algae oil. So I just want to throw that out there. The algae oils are really fantastic. There's a couple of really good companies that make them. And that's what I recommend to my patients, because again, I have a lot of patients that are either vegan, vegetarian, or they're, on very limited diets because of one reason or another. It might be a food sensitivity. And then I want to go back to Manuka honey because it's incredible, absolutely incredible Manuka honey. It's antiviral, it's antibacterial. Manuka honey, they actually use in wound centers, and they use it for wounds because it'll increase healing and decrease the chance of infection. So it's just great. You can take a teaspoon or a tablespoon. There are lots of companies that make it. I know I'm not supposed to say companies, but I don't care. I get this from Trader Joe's. It's my favorite. It's a lot less expensive, a lot more bang for your buck. And it's just very high, absolutely fantastic. All right. So I'm not gonna go through everything in here, but foods that boost your immune system, you're going to look at, vegetables are the key piece for me. I'm never really talking about fruits for immune function. I'm talking about vegetables. I'm talking about spices. That's where I want people to concentrate, because a lot of people concentrate. I'll talk more about fruits later, but, tomatoes, collard greens, spinach, sweet potatoes, carrots. That's where you're going to get your carotenoids. Seeds, vegetable oils, grains for your vitamin E. There are some in the vitamin C category. I truly want to point out that you can get more from a red bell pepper, significantly more than you can from most of these listed up here. But then zinc, we're usually talking more if you're vegan, beans, or a vegetarian. If you're not, dark meat and the turkey. I'm going to leave my beef. I'm going to not get up on my soapbox for the beef and talk about environmental impact. But garlic, most people know, omega-3 fatty acids, which I've already touched upon. I love this because all the time people come into my office and they're like, I'm sick, but I took a bunch of vitamin C. And I'm like, great, how'd you take that? And they're like, well, I drank 4 glasses of orange juice this morning. And I'm like, that was the first thing you could do for your immune system. So super important. Again, look at this bell pepper, 240 milligrams of vitamin C. Over here, the orange, 70 milligrams. There's not a comparison. And if we go back to the sugar component, we have to talk about it. I'm not saying walk away from your orange. I love this orange. I'm just saying I'm not a big fan of juices. I'm not. There's so much sugar. If you've ever made your own juice at home, how many Have you made orange juice? How many oranges did it take?
I mean, just yesterday we did grapefruit and orange and blueberry and mint, and it was like
We went
a
through
bushel
2
full just for
grapefruits,
like
2 oranges, and we had
mason
like as much juice. We're like, oh,
Uh-huh.
that's great. We'll share that.
Right. And so when people make those, there are so many wonderful polyphenols. There are so many nutritive aspects to fruits. I'm not saying like don't eat fruit. That's a terrible idea. What I'm saying is when you do a fruit juice, do this much fruit juice, do the rest water or sparkling water, right? And if you want vitamin C, do like a salad. That's a better way to get your vitamin C in. Maybe enjoy it with a little bit of fruit juice. But we don't want to tax your immune system. I love this. I posted this the other day, and people were commenting like immediately, like, "Oh, yours hasn't switched over already," and I'm like, "No, it really has."
All right, stress. So stress is going to suppress the immune system, limit the immune system. It's really hard to break the cycle. And like in the moment, like I know that my thoughts run away from me. And so it's like, how do you stop that from happening? And my biggest thing is to practice the pause. And there's a couple of different ways to do that. And my favorite is 4 square breathing, also known as box breathing. And that's where you inhale for 4, you hold it for 4, you exhale for 4, and you hold it. And you do that 4 times. And if you do that, it instantly calms down your entire nervous system, and it gives your mind, and then focusing on counting, it gives your mind a break so that you can stop that cyclical thinking and like think about something else. And then you're able to come back and think about it more logically and realize it's probably not that important, that it's worth the mental anguish. There are meditation apps that can help. Bookending the day. You want to talk about that one?
Yeah, I love bookending.
This is hers.
This is totally mine. Although I'm happy to talk about all of them. And along with 4 square breathing, I just want to go back. There's so many different ways that you can breathe, right? Like you are probably the perfect person to talk about this for like hours on end. But one thing I like to do, I need a little extra. I'm going to be honest. Like I have to rotate things because they don't work for me for very long. And so I need that novelty of them. But one of the things that I do is obstruct one nostril, and then I'll switch. So I cannot remember where that. Do you remember where that comes from?
It's alternate nostril breathing.
Yeah.
So you breathe in, hold, breathe out.
Mm-hmm.
So it helps to switch. We typically breathe in through one side, and then the body will just switch. So this forces the switch to help clear out the nasal passages as well.
Do you know where it comes from, though?
It's ancient yogic breathing. Like it's super, super old.
Yeah.
I'm sure they practiced in
I don't know if you can hear this on Facebook, but it's ancient yoga breathing.
Yeah.
Because the body naturally does it for you, and when you force it to do it, when you block it, it forces the body to think about it and do it differently.
Yeah.
And again, remember that 90% of what's happening in our body we are not conscious about. So it's forcing us to be conscious about this and bringing our awareness to the activity of breathing.
Said, yeah.
And breathing is delivering all of your nutrients to all of your cells. It is literally giving you life, right? Like it's something that we can't live without.
And then I saw
So
some
super
video
important.
on Facebook that showed how breathing like massages the vagal nerve and massages your intestine, like all of your organs, like and what that does to the body and how it relaxes it. It's pretty incredible.
And I see this a lot in office where we're always trying to find a silver bullet as a society. And so people are like, oh, well, can I just do breathing treatments or IV ozone and oxygenate that way or hyperbaric oxygen? I'm like, how about we focus on you learning to breathe on a daily basis, even if it's only for a certain amount of time each day.
So most people breathe out of the 30% of their lung capacity. Typically, without even knowing it, that's where people breathe. And when you breathe here, your parasympathetic and sympathetic responses signal that you're in fight or flight.
Mm-hmm.
So when you can increase your breath and take the breath longer, bigger, fuller, it signals to the body that you're not going to be eaten by a tiger.
And we're going to talk a lot about that. Actually.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Bookending your day means that you start your day intentionally and you end your day intentionally. So again, I kind of did a little teaser this week where we were talking about this on social media. The beginning of your day, a lot of people will say, oh, I don't have time for that. Or they'll say, well, it doesn't really matter how I set up my day. And I'm like, really? Have you ever sat in traffic and something has gone wrong and you were like angry for hours, right? Like, whatever happens in that moment can absolutely cascade through your day. So this is the moment you have to set your intention for the entire day. And then the end of the day is the part that falls off where everybody ignores it. They're like, oh, I'm going to sit down. I'm with my family. I'm going to finish up some work. I'm going to sit on the couch and watch some TV. And then they completely throw away the other most important end of their part of their day, because that's going to set up your sleep where, again, your brain doesn't stop. Your immune system is its highest. It's going to go in and clear out. It's going to clean up your everything, all of your debris. So it's going to actually clean up your brain, any debris in your body. It's going to do all of that healing. That's when your REM sleep comes in. All of those pieces that are going to set you up for your day the next day. So to ignore it is really, I mean, it's just one of, and I'm so guilty of it. I do it all the time.
I was just thinking that.
But bookending your day, I mean, even putting it on your calendar, make sure you schedule it in, however you got to do it, because that's how I have to do it.
Yeah.
Keeping your routine.
Keeping your routine. So through the holidays, a lot of people just throw their routine out the window and they're just like in pure survival mode. And there's no planning. There's nothing going on. It's just, I have to go to this. I have to go to that. I have to go to that. And one of the best, and your body's not designed for that. We want to know what's happening next, and we like routine. So the best that we can do to keep it. So again, bookending your day, keeping the same morning routine, keeping your workout routine, all of that stuff. If you can keep it as much the same as possible, it's going to instantly keep your stress down, so that you have your cup is full enough that you can handle the bigger stressors that come along. Like, oh, there's like you have to dress up 5 different ways for school this week because that's what elementary schools think is a good idea. And I'm like, I don't have the money to spend $100 on pajamas for 5 days, So it's stuff like that. And if you're already running on E and you're already just feeling frazzled, then that just sets you over the edge. And then some of the stuff probably won't work because then it's just too much going on. So if we can keep the routine and then we can build in stress management tools, just makes everything better. And then I don't do well when I'm hungry. I just don't. And eating more sugar than normal and all those things, my blood sugar goes out of control. And so keeping snacks on hand for yourself and for others is a really good idea. Same for my kids. Like, they're just like, they become complete monsters if they're hungry. And I'm like, you need to eat something. And they instantly feel better. So keeping snacks on hand really does help with stress, because being hungry and low blood sugar can throw it all out the window.
We have to bring this up later when we talk about anger. Let's talk about the hangry right here. So I love this. 1 minute of anger weakens the immune system for 4 to 5 hours. It's actually 6. So I just need to correct. It was really pretty though. It's 6 hours. And 1 minute of laughter boosts the immune system for 24 hours. And this is scientifically proven. So what's really fascinating about this, and this is like one of my favorite pieces of it, is that 1 minute of anger weakening the immune system doesn't mean that you're angry in that moment, per se. It could mean that you're remembering an event that you're angry about. And that does the exact same thing. So, and that happens all the time, right? I'm thinking about what went wrong last week. I'm thinking about what happened yesterday. I'm thinking about this person and that person and these relationships, and especially through the holiday season where we're forced to often maybe family members that we don't see all year, whatever it may be, it definitely gets heightened. And here,
Oh, definitely.
I have to say, with the snowbirds, sometimes I have a hard time. I have a hard time with that. All right, so this is a little bit much on a slide, but what I want to say is attend low stress celebrations. I'm a big fan of celebrations. We've actually talked about that. I talk about it with ceremony. I talk about it with celebrations. Is that all of your good, happy hormones are boosted by celebration. You don't necessarily think about that. The other thing is that cheering specifically boosts serotonin. So maybe you're not cheering, but we were talking about this earlier.
Yeah. I was like, well, that must be why people get addicted to sports, because you see them like screaming at the TV all excited. And I'm like, they're addicted to the high, the serotonin high from cheering. So like, it just kind of cracks me because I'm not a sports person. Like, I can watch it and it's cool and it's like fun in the moment, but I'm not, and I just don't get it. And then I saw this and I was like, that makes sense. I celebrate everything. I'm like, yay, I got to work 5 minutes early.
We do. Really.
Yeah,
We've been celebrating a lot.
We've been celebrating a lot. Like everything good. We're like, you'll never guess what happened.
So don't just think about exercise with endorphins, which it
Yeah.
does. It's fantastic. But also think about celebratory conversations. And the other key piece is it reduces cortisol, which is going to combat your anxiety. It's going to help with that piece. Right down here, I want to put a little extra emphasis on the amygdala. So think of the amygdala as that memory spot where a good or a bad thing happens and it categorizes it. It says, hey, I'm going to remember this for next time because I want to protect myself. And so you smell something and you remember your grandmother's house, or you smell something or see something or hear something like that song and it reminds you of something and that anger comes up. That's your amygdala. And so these celebrations actually support the amygdala, and having conversations where you feel supported is another key piece of that. So it doesn't necessarily mean you need to be at a holiday celebration, but it might be a class. Let's say I go to a spin class and I have my community, or whatever it may be. You are actually helping your amygdala, and you can reset those ties in your brain.
Now I have a question, and I didn't think about this while we were walking through it, but like gratitude journals, is that part of this cycle? So that's a really easy thing.
Also boosts all of these pieces. It's just for this, I wanted to highlight it specifically because most people don't think about it, and I wanted to highlight low stress celebrations because I have a handful of patients that are like, I'm avoiding all of the parties. I don't want to do it. And I'm like, okay, let's set the intention, decide very intentionally which parties you're going to attend, and then be very present in those conversations about what's happening. You are in control. You get to leave when you're ready. And it's only going to be a positive experience for you.
Yes.
I love this. Have you guys seen this? The Superman or Superwoman, Wonder Woman pose. It has lots and lots of, they call it the power stance. But you literally stand with your feet apart, hands on your hips, and you should do it for at least 2 minutes. I've actually prescribed this to patients. It's fantastic because it helps with cortisol, it actually boosts testosterone. Men, are you listening? Boosting testosterone in men, helps with performance, helps us cope well in stressful situations. And so this is a really nice one, again, where you're activating all your muscles, you're really building in that confidence. And whatever it is, when we do it intentionally, it has a very profound effect.
I love it.
All right.
All right, so more about stress management. You have to be realistic about what you can fit into your schedule. This is part of being intentional. While you may want to do all the things, is it realistic? And will you stay sane while you do it? So it's really important that you sit down, you look at your calendar and see what can be fit in, and then we'll give you tools next on how to talk to people when you have to say no. Because you're going to have to. And I'm a people pleaser, so that just the thought of conflict stresses me out. Saying no to someone is conflict. And so it literally, I do the shallow breathing, it literally gets me going. I hate it. But boundaries and learning to be okay with it is so important. Making sure you're building in self-care, and that's where I'm talking about routine, and making sure you're still exercising, making sure you still have downtime. I've been really stressed out lately, and this morning I was like, oh, I haven't reconnected in a while. So I took 10 minutes just to journal and to read, and it just I had the best day today. Even with how busy it was busier than I had anticipated when we planned this event. And my daughter had a school presentation. She goes to school in Chandler. I'm all the way up here, so it's a lot of back and forth. I still needed to grocery shop because our fridge is full because we have 6 people, so it's just one of those things. But it was just setting the intention for the day, making sure I built in that self-care, which did not take very long, made it so much better. And so a few minutes, everybody spends 10 minutes on their phone. You can put that aside and do something for yourself. Do the box breathing or the 4 square breathing when you even start to become angry or even overwhelmed. If you start noticing you're shallow, your breath is getting shallow, or the thoughts start going, practice the pause, deep breathe in whatever way. Use an app, whatever, because I like the visual ones. Even my Fitbit, it's bigger and smaller, and I'm like, I can't breathe in for 8 counts, there's no more room. But it works. Again, making sure you're eating well and what that looks like is making sure you're getting plenty of protein to stay full, plenty of healthy fats and produce, and then comfort foods like warming soups, and then beef stew and things like that. Just anything that's packed full. And actually, I call it happy food. Like that's just that food that makes you happy. And really important. And then talking positive. It's all about the words that you use. Really, you want to make sure you're giving yourself grace and others grace, and then giving people the benefit of the doubt and not assuming the worst. So automatically thinking positive versus negative. That person in traffic probably didn't see you. I have a huge blind spot I didn't know I had, and I totally cut someone off today. And I'm like, I'm so sorry. I didn't see you. And I'm hoping that instead of getting mad at me, which they swung around me, so I'm assuming I made them mad. But like just assuming the best because I really didn't mean to, and then again practicing the art of saying no and saying it respectfully, because I think that's really hard for people, especially when you're not used to it and you're just like no, and having to learn how to word it.
I just had this conversation with a doctor actually. It's probably a couple of days ago, where she was talking about boundaries in her practice, and I said, remember, when you practice boundaries, you're helping the patient and yourself because you're no good to them if you're not practicing boundaries. And also you're practicing value, self-value. And so by those boundaries, you teach them, these important lessons, and remember those. I like to look at the different types of self-care because a lot of times I frequently prescribe self-care. And to most people, that means absolutely nothing, right? I mean, they really don't know. They're like, well, I don't have time for a spa or a massage or a
mani-pedi.
Yeah, I don't have a bath for a, Epsom salt bath or a bubble bath or whatever. And I like to break it down and talk about like physical, emotional, social, and spiritual, and that you always have a place where you can bring some self-care in. And here's the thing, sometimes the self-care that I choose isn't the type that I necessarily need, and so it won't really fill up my cup. And so when we look at the different types of self-care, thinking, okay, if I'm doing physical, I'm going to feel better. I'm going to feel better if I'm sleeping, I'm stretching, I'm walking, food, yoga, rest. Do I need something a little bit different? Like, do I need some journaling, some sacred space? Is it because I'm not setting proper boundaries? That's self-care. Support systems, communication time together, or even emotional. I love this one because emotional maturity is one that I see quite a bit, where those conversations of emotional maturity, like, am I practicing emotional maturity? How can I expect anyone else to practice emotional maturity with me?
Right.
Because I also do not like conflict, and that requires a lot of emotional maturity. So,
Sure does.
that is a type of self-care. And also, knowing when something, like I like to say, I like my people like I like my products on Toxic. Right?
Yeah. Can we go back to that real quick? So I just want to really hit on the spiritual side a little bit, because I feel like this is one that gets neglected the most. Most people associate spiritual with religion and a to-do list that they're supposed to do, when really it's things like getting time alone, spending time meditating, which does not mean you're sitting there saying Om, okay? Practicing yoga, connecting to someone or something, being out in nature, journaling, or just having a sacred space where you're able to come in and rejuvenate. I feel like that's something that just like all this stuff is really easy and you see about it all the time, but this is stuff that seems a little out there. Like that's for hippies, that's for like religious people, that's for Christian, but really taking care of our spirit is so important, whatever method you choose to do that. But it's all about time alone is huge for me. I don't have it. I'm always on the go, and I'm always working when I'm alone, but literally you could just sometimes I just need to sit, and that fills up my cup. I just sit for 30 minutes, and I literally just stare, which is really hard for me, but every once in a while, like, that's self-care. So I wanted to highlight that really quick.
Healthy boundaries. So I love this. The holistic psychologist put this up, and I just realized that that's a typo, but that's okay. It gives you some tools of things to think about, like saying, modify these, use them as a template, whatever your situations may be. So I'm going to head upstairs and get some quiet time. That's one that I've been using, and it's really hard for my family. Sometimes they're like, well, what are you doing upstairs? Like, I'm getting some quiet time.
There's a party going on upstairs.
You're not missing anything.
It's like a toddler's going to the bathroom with you and staring because they're like, what am I missing? And you're like, there's nothing going on here, guys. All right, so let's not discuss this topic tonight at dinner. So we have space boundaries and we have topic boundaries. Like there's just some things that get people going, especially around the holidays. There's always that one person who loves to stir the pot, and just, setting boundaries, and people don't usually like to respect them the first time, but hold firm to that. That's huge.
Mm-hmm. I love this one because we changed our talk at the dinner table. We have family dinner every single night. Super important. A lot of things go by the wayside, but we have family dinner every single night. And sometimes it's really late, I'm going to be honest, but it's still family dinner. And so our topics used to be a lot more of social justice and things like that, or depending on how old the kids were, everything was always really age appropriate. Well, now I have a 20-year-old. And so the topics have gotten a little bit more edgy because she's 20. And so she's going to save the world and do all of that. And the topic had to change at the dinner table. And that's when we really started focusing more on gratitudes. And everybody had to tell me more about what was the best part of your day? What was the worst part of your day? Let's talk about that. What are you most grateful for, in this moment? And I love Brene Brown when she talks about this. She's fantastic. I also prescribe her to a lot of patients. I don't know if she, so I feel like someday some of them will go back to her. But topic boundaries is huge. We won't be able to stay the night, but we're really looking forward to dinner. So time boundaries, I have a hard time with this because I want to stay and I also want to please people, or even being invited to things like this weekend, I missed our holiday party here. It was my son's 10th birthday, right? And so the important piece was for me to be with my son, even though he's having a birthday party here this weekend. That wasn't the point, even just making him his favorite meal, whatever he wanted, that was the point. So, you can't make it in that moment. Let people know we really appreciate it. These are my time boundaries. I'm looking forward to this time that we've set apart, letting them know that you're acknowledging the importance of those connections and relationships.
Yeah, and then this is a huge one for me, and it's consumption boundaries or food boundaries. I work a lot with food restrictions. I have a lot myself, and especially in the beginning, and a lot of people don't understand, it's the holidays, you can eat whatever you want. No, I cannot. And I actually wrote my newsletter this week gave all these things that people have told me, people have said oh, you just fell for that gluten-free marketing crap. And, how dare you not eat my food? What, are you too good for it now? And it's are you serious? No, I can't eat this right now because if I do, I can't go to the zoo with you tomorrow because I'm going to be chained to the toilet, or I'm going to be in so much pain that I'm not going to be able to get out of bed. And, but how do you say that in a nice way? Because you don't want to say it like that, right? You're thinking it. But it's I'm not eating this right now, but I really appreciate the time that you're making it. How about I bring something that, is a similar recipe that we can all enjoy together? And I don't ever believe in coming to people with problems if you don't have a solution. So always offer, always have another choice. Oh, I can't eat that, but I can eat this recipe and it tastes really good. You might like it. Can I make it? Type of thing. But again, it's being respectful. I'm not eating this, so you're being firm. But I appreciate your thinking of me. And can I offer something else? It's really important. And I don't know, just for me and just I'm getting so many texts and emails from clients being I don't know what to do at this party this weekend. And, it's really hard to say no, especially if you're doing something really weird, like a low mold diet or a low histamine, or you have GI issues going on, something like that. It's really hard because you want to eat it. You miss it. It's not and people will peer pressure you, and it's how do you handle that? But that happens with all of these. You don't see your family all year. You're there for a week, and everybody wants every minute of your time. You're but I still want to have time to chill. Mm-hmm. How do you, setting those boundaries so that you're not stressed out is really important.
And remembering other people's intentions and not taking it personally. Maybe grandma cooks because this is the way that she can take care of her family. This is how she identifies as taking care of you. and it's not something that you can eat. So come from that place when you have that discussion that
Yeah.
like, I love that you do this for us, and this is a family recipe, and it means so much to you. And I love that you want me to be healthy, and that you care so much, about me, that we can have this conversation. I can't have it the way that it is now. Nutrition fact: if you drink a gallon of water per day, you won't have time for other people's drama because you'll be too busy peeing. Stay hydrated, my friends. Drink water, please. No one seems to be drinking water right now.
One of the things this is what my dad tells me all the time: if I drink that much water, I'm going to go to the bathroom all the time. I'm like, that only lasts like 2 weeks. I'm like, so it's just 2 weeks of like escaping people. Like, that's not so bad, right? And then you're back to normal. But every time you increase your water intake, you are going to go more frequently, but then it starts to balance out. So get rid of that excuse. It doesn't work.
Unless you want to use it. As
Well, yeah, I mean, it can be. Yeah. So one thing that most people are really scared to talk about, because everybody wants it to be so happy and Hallmark Christmassy and da-da-da-da, right, is anxiety and grief. One of my best friends, her dad died. The holidays are super hard for her. Like, it's not a happy time, and she really, really struggles. And I think that needs to be acknowledged, that like a lot of people miss their loved ones. I'm at an age where my friends' parents are dying. I'm like, we're in our 30s, like we're way too young for that, but it's happening left and right, and it's heartbreaking. And I feel like people the conflict is so high because they don't feel like they have permission to be sad, because it's supposed to be happy. And when I was going through my divorce, one of the best pieces of advice I got was feel your emotions now so you don't have to deal with them later. And so I believe, like, if you're feeling sad, feel it in the moment, but don't live there, but feel it and acknowledge it, and then, move on from that, process it. So just make sure to if other people around you, because we all want things to be happy. My boyfriend loves for everybody to be happy. He doesn't like emotions. So just making sure that you acknowledge that they miss them, cry with them, sit with them, and then help them, honor them, and then move on. So I really wanted to talk about that. And then we talked about this again and again, like anxiety. Practice the pause, step outside of the moment. One of my favorite strategies for people who really can't get out of the cycle is tapping. And you can look it up on YouTube. I'm not going to go through it now, but look it up. It's called tapping, and it's very helpful for people who literally can't get out of the cycle. Pausing doesn't work. Your brain just still goes. It's the best distraction I have found to help people kind of bring it in. And then, of course, box breathing and yoga. We're going to emphasize that because it really works.
Another thing I always like to highlight for people is like, my emotion that I'm least comfortable with is grief, right? It's like sadness. And that's the same for a lot of other people. I don't like to cry. It's like, and I grew up in a family, and, again, Brené Brown talks about this, like, we weren't allowed to be weak. We weren't allowed to cry. Like, that wasn't something that was fostered. It was like, well, stop crying or I'll give you something to cry about. I may have heard that at least once growing up. And here's a key piece is I also have a post on social media that goes through tears and goes through the chemical structure of tears and how that chemical structure changes depending on what emotion is being
That was a great post.
exhibited.
Yeah.
And it's super important to let yourself feel those emotions, because a good example is that when we're grieving, we're actually, our tears that are released, we have like chemicals that help us deal with pain. And so when we suppress that, our pain actually increases. And so I talk about this a little bit with, my patients that are in chronic pain. I'm like, suppress your pain. And this is what happens. Like, let your body feel the pain, let your body feel the grief, let your body get it out. Because again, our bodies are innately wise. We do these things for a reason. We create snot, again, so that it'll trap the intruders and get it out. We make earwax so that it'll trap the intruders and get it out. We make saliva for digestive enzymes that are going to break down our foods and kill, intruders. Like, there are all these pieces that are innately wise to us, and our tears, the different types of tears, again, allowing yourself that space to grieve and other people that space to grieve as often as they need to is super important. For additional supports, there are so many other supports, and I tend to I'm not with someone. I'm not counseling them. I'm not a counselor. I try and give them as many supports as I can on my end. And so a few things that I really love, homeopathic ignatia helps us process grief, and probably 80% of the time or more, acute grief and chronic grief. So taking homeopathic ignatia, any of my patients know if they've lost someone, they've lost a dog, they've lost anything, I'm like, here's some ignatia. You can take it every 2 hours if you want. Like, I don't care. Just take some homeopathic ignatia. One of the other things that I carry with me, I actually get this at Strawberry Hedgehog downtown Phoenix, is trauma spray, and it's called post-trauma stabilizer. This stuff is amazing. And this is flower essence. I don't know anything about flower essence. I'm not going to pretend to know anything about flower essence. And in my logical brain, I'm like, that is just, no, right? Except this is probably the most profound thing I have as somebody who suffers with PTSD. This is one of the most profound things that I've come across to work for me in those moments where I can't say no. Because sometimes I can talk to myself and talk to myself and talk to myself and 4 square breathe and it's not working. Yeah. So I just spray it on myself, spray it under my tongue, and there I go. I also keep self-love essential oil on my desk for my patients and myself. And that's also from Strawberry Hedgehog. She's kind of amazing. So shout out Strawberry Hedgehog. And then I keep this, I actually have a whole slew of things I keep for patients, but I'm going to tell you what I use for myself in my purse and Rescue Remedy. So there are lots of different things that you can take to help you when you just can't get out of your own way. Your mind will always believe everything you tell it. Feed it hope, feed it truth, feed it with love. So I also love, I wanted to put it in here, and it didn't make it in here, that every cell in your body is eavesdropping on what you tell it. And keeping that in mind, that literally every single cell in your body is eavesdropping on what you're telling yourself.
All right, so if we travel, what are some things to do? First of all, make sure you have your supplements on hand, because if you are going to get sick, you want to nip it in the bud fast, and you start feeling tired, you get a little mucusy, like my eyes kind of burn a little bit. One of my first symptoms is an earache, so it's like I always bring my neti pot. Like that's like my lifesaver, right? Making sure we're washing our hands, we're staying hydrated, we're getting sleep. And then there's some stuff that Dr. Geyer can give you that can help prevent it. My favorite is the
Engestol.
Thank you. And Engestol shot. Like that stuff. We had like sickness in the house, and I was like, no, she was having a sale, and I'm like, I need this. And I'm like, the next day I felt like I had a little like in my throat, and it was gone, and I didn't get it. And I was like, this stuff is amazing. So there's lots of stuff on hand, or there's lots of options and tools in the toolbox for us to stay well. I remember when we were traveling to New Orleans in October, this lady in front of us, like it was a wet hacking cough. And I was like, I'm so glad I packed the zinc. like we looked at each other, and I was like, oh, and I waited until she wasn't in front of me, but I was just like, oh my God, I'm like, she didn't wear a mask. Like if I'm going to be hacking up a lung, like protect people around you. And airplanes are the worst because the air recycles. So if one person's sick, even if they don't know it, like everybody on that flight is going to be getting exposed.
For sure. I hear this one all the time, so I just want to kind of loop back to just keep your supplements on hand. People will come in, they'll be like, well, I was traveling and I didn't bring my supplements with me because, people don't realize, like, what would I put all those bottles in? What would I do? Just put a little pill case together. I put mine in Ziploc bags. And I've also had to label them really well. Sometimes I've made labels for patients actually when they were traveling because they were afraid they were going to get stopped. And glutamine looks like cocaine. So,
so does magnesium.
That's a super important one. I've written prescription letters for them to carry with them just in case they were stopped. Immune boosting injection, I just want to loop back to that because it's pretty cost effective. It's amazing. I always recommend people get it, as soon as they're preventatively, as soon as they're getting sick. Like my dry throat.
Speaking of, this is yours. As you're coughing. The air came on.
Yep. All right. Oh, my whole voice went out. Supplements prophylactically. Wow, that was crazy. Nip your snot bugs in the bud. I think we might need to skip this.
Okay. All right, we'll come back to this one. She's talking about some of her favorites, and so I'm gonna read them. We have Manuka honey. You got it?
Yep.
All right, we're back.
Sorry about that. That was really weird. So supplements prophylactically. I just did a Instagram on this, a video on your scalp bugs. Nasal sprays, neti rinse, nebulizing treatments, levels of intervention. I walk through them all. Magic socks are amazing.
You want to, magic socks are when you have wet socks and then you put a dry sock over and then you sleep in them.
Yeah.
And in my mom groups, some people are trying them and it's all kinds of amazing. So it's pretty fun when stuff that works for me works for other people.
And then avoid and minimize things that will challenge your immune system.
And you already know all of those. So
I think I just choked on my own saliva. That was amazing.
I do that.
Of course. So video on this, video on that. This is what I have on my immune shelf. Sinus Spray. This is Southern Banlan tea. It's amazing. You can't see it, but this is very well. That's for kids. It's a powder. It has arabinogalactans in it. It has elderberry in it. It has a lot of amazing things. Probiotics, the Angus-style injection. That's vitamin A. Natural chest rub. Please don't use Vicks. We're so past Vicks. There's no reason to use it anymore. And that's garlic, mullet, ear drops, which is how I treat ear infections.
Yeah. I discovered garlic ear drops when my son was like 2. And I used to suffer from chronic ear infections, and that was like the best stuff on the planet. It nips it in the bud, and it doesn't. Hydrogen peroxide almost burns when there's an infection going on, and this doesn't do that. And so I love it. And then I think you should talk about vitamin A because everybody's been terrified about getting poisoned by it. So I think you should dive into that.
Vitamin A. Do you guys use a vitamin A?
No.
Vitamin A is my favorite. Like, okay, I just got really excited. You can tell. I got really excited, and I'm getting my voice back. That was super weird. So vitamin D is not up here, but vitamin D, of course, is a big one. I think, I don't know where it was.
Vitamin A.
So let's focus on vitamin A. Vitamin A is absolutely necessary for the immune system. In short courses, you can go in very high doses. In long courses, you're not supposed to take vitamin A long term. Now, in developing countries, all those pictures of them giving drops to little kids, that's vitamin A every single time. Now, a lot of people are like, oh, that's a vaccine. That's this. No, it's vitamin A because that's what they need for their immune systems. So Mimi, who's the owner of Dream Team Academy, she came in a couple weeks ago. She's like, that it's a lifesaver. Like I started to get sick, I took it, and it's gone. And you can go really high. Here's the thing. Vitamin A, when you go high, like too high in acute doses, it'll give you a headache. So it'll cause a little bit of brain swelling. We're talking well over 200,000 IUs. So for adults, I'm doing 3-day course, 200,000 IUs for one day, 150 for another, 150 for another. For kids, it's dosed by weight. And that's what a lot of people miss. I see this all the time. Parents come in, they're like, oh, but I found this, and this on the internet. And then I talked to somebody at the grocery store at Whole Foods, and they told me to take this and this. And I'm like, okay, here's the thing. Not everything's safe for kids, 1. Number 2, we dose most things by weight. And so vitamin A happens to be one of those. It has to be dosed by weight. Super, super, super important. I don't want to make my kids sick in the short term. But vitamin A, if I had nothing else and I was getting sick, like if I could choose one thing, vitamin A would be it. It really would, every single time. And then this is a great immune tea. I love immune teas, and I actually really love the process of making teas. I have a lot of parents that make it with their kids. It's a bonding activity. They're making it with their kids, and this has some really great herbs. And herbs are different depending on how you want to utilize them. So teas are a really great way to get nutrients in from the teas, steeping them, and for the immune function. Not that I don't love a good glycerin, because they're nice and sweet. All right. And I felt like I would be really remiss if I just ignored antibiotics, because now it's that time. I just had this conversation again. I have this conversation all the time where people come in, they're like, well, I got an antibiotic, and they didn't come to see me for that. They went to teledocs, or like the worst, so the telehealth, urgent cares, or they went, wherever, and then they came to me and they're like, oh, I went, maybe my primary care and I'm doing other care for them, and they'll say, I got an antibiotic for a sinus infection. I'm like, okay, like the standard guidelines don't even recommend that anymore. So that's where I have to kind of come in, and we're talking about with antibiotics, we need to be really start stressing antibiotic resistance, because we really want them to work when we need them to work. And we have a rise of antibiotic resistance. We also have, every single time we take an antibiotic, it depletes our own innate immune system, because it's getting rid of our beneficial bacteria, making it more likely that we're going to get more infections. And then we end up in this cycle. So that's the cycle when people usually come to me, is they're really, really sick. They don't know why they're sick. They have GI issues. They have this, that, and the other thing that people can't figure out. And then they come to me and say, nobody else can figure this out, but I'm hoping you can. I'm like, great, okay. And antibiotics are very often at the foundation of that. So at least 30% of outpatient antibiotic prescriptions are absolutely unnecessary, resulting in 47 million excess prescriptions each year. Super important, 47 million. Half of all antibiotic prescriptions written for acute upper respiratory conditions are unnecessary. And then we have sinus infections, middle ear infections, and viral upper respiratory infections. If your physician is immediately giving you an antibiotic for any of these things, maybe look around. that was I was going to go in a different direction. I'll be more gentle. And then I had to throw the slide in too, because they aren't always the answer. This is actually from the CDC. So even people were like, well, where are you getting your facts from? Well, this one came from the CDC. If you have a cold, a runny nose, bronchitis, please don't take antibiotics. Now, what people don't realize is that when you have these infections, some of them, like sinus infections, can be bacterial, viral, or allergic, right? But most often, we're talking viruses. So bronchitis, flu, right? That's a big one. Your sore throat, middle ear infection, like every single kid I see. It's like, oh, I immediately went on antibiotics. No, that's not the recommendation. Now, granted, recommendations for kids, a little bit different, 23 months and younger. Antibiotics are recommended 24 months and older. They're not. And then we go over here to the bacterial stuff. It's like whooping cough, strep throat. We're talking urinary tract infection, not upper respiratory infection. So your colds, your flus, your ear infections should not be antibiotics right off the bat. Now, I worked in a conventional pediatrics office, the very first salary job I had out of residency, and they were like, just give everybody an antibiotic, because we don't want to see them back. We don't have the room. So there are a lot of reasons for that. All right, so that's my crazy family. That's our crazy family. Notice I'm not in the picture. I'm not in any pictures because I'm always taking the picture.
We set up a timer on a grill at a park
Oh,
for that one. So
I'm not savvy enough for timers.
I'm not either. Nate is. Nate's like, stand there, don't move, and he runs. But Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. We're so glad that you guys could join us. And thank you for joining us on Facebook family. If you RSVP'd, you will be getting a copy of the PowerPoint and the handouts in your email. So look for that. And if you don't get it, email me at marian@roadtolivingwhole.com, and I will make sure you get it. Sometimes my emails go to spam, so check there. Bye, guys.